From a lost warplane sunken off the coast of Turkey to an abandoned aircraft turned into the most luxurious Costa Rican tourist destination, here are 10 of the craziest and most mysterious abandoned planes in the world. Number 10. AlgaeCovered Warplane. There is a Douglas Dakota DC-3 that once flew 8,000 feet in the air, but is now currently residing abandoned 70 feet beneath the Mediterranean Sea. The plane is 65 feet long and was once used as a transport vehicle for Turkish paratroopers. It was deliberately sunk in 2009 to be used as a cool underwater diving experience for people with experience. But amazingly, it's still in pretty good shape today. The visibility underwater is often poor at the site, and divers have to go pretty deep before actually being able to see the plane. As you get closer and closer, it looms out of the darkness. It's almost completely covered in algae, but still looks like the propellers could begin spinning and the plane could take off at any minute. The plane used to carry soldiers. Now it's home to shrimp gobbies living in the dusty sand beneath its shadow, as well as barracudas who swim through the coral-encrusted propellers looking for food. Even the controls in the cockpit are still relatively intact. As for the history of the Douglas DC-3, it was originally built in the UK and took off in 1935 as one of the most successful models of its time. About 13,000 were built, with a military variant being used during the war to transport Allied forces. The very last DC-3 was built in 1945, but there are actually still some models flying in developing countries like Bolivia. Number 9. The Arizona Boneyard. The Boneyard is Arizona's very own airplane graveyard, filled with somewhere around 4,000 abandoned aircrafts. It's been described as creepy, fascinating, and even beautiful. The eerie site is located just outside Tucson, in the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base. The planes that have been abandoned here were either heavily damaged, discarded for being outdated, or simply no longer needed. The base was created back in the year 1946 to house the Boeing B-25 Superfortress and the Douglas C-47 Skytrain, but has since taken a multitude of airplanes. They are lined up in the dry desert, all day reflecting the hot Arizona sun. Some planes have been put in storage with the intention of possibly using them later on, while some are just there to be picked apart for extra pieces. In any case, considering there are thousands of planes here and the lack of rainfall and dry soil keep them from getting rusted, chances are the Boneyard will only acquire more forgotten planes as time goes on, until the aviation cemetery is filled to the brim with old, unusable aircraft. Would you like to check out this aircraft graveyard? Number 8. The Swamp Ghosts. In Papua New Guinea, there was a World War II bomber sitting forgotten and abandoned in the middle of the jungle. Papua New Guinea was used as an important battlefield between the Australians and the Japanese, and a critical piece of the land that the Allied forces did not want falling into Japanese hands. It's now riddled with the wreckage of warbirds, from crashed helicopters to planes, overgrown with vines and filled with creepy wild animals. The most impressive piece of wreckage in the country was definitely the bomber, the B-17E Flying Fortress, nicknamed the Swamp Ghost. It was on a bombing mission in early 1942 when it ran out of fuel and crashed into the Agayembo Swamp, around 8 miles from the northern coast. Ever since then, the plane has slowly been sinking into the soggy soil. At least it was until 2006, when a salvager from America took the abandoned aircraft apart piece by piece and then tried to take it home with him. The local people in Papua New Guinea were furious and stopped the crates full of abandoned bombers' pieces from leaving the country. To this very day, the Swamp Ghost, which sat undisturbed in a literal swamp for 64 years, is stuck in a warehouse on the edge of town in Leh. And to be honest, it doesn't look like anyone wants the thing. It could sit in the warehouse for another 64 years before someone decides to actually do something with it. Number 7. Abandoned Boeing 707. There's an abandoned Boeing 707 at the Tegel Airport in Berlin, Germany. It's sitting at the edge of the runway, forgotten and disused. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary abandoned plane that is no longer in service. There's no smoke or fire damage, and it's completely intact. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find that the specific airplane was once involved in an insane international hijacking incident that involved at least 3 other aircrafts. The incident is known as the Dawson Fields hijackings. The plane itself was made for an Israeli national airline in 1961, but in September of 1970, It was flying from Amsterdam when it got hijacked in mid-air. At the same time, 3 other planes were hijacked in Europe as well. This 707 was hijacked by a pair from South America who were part of a revolutionary group. They boarded the plane armed with pistols and grenades. Luckily for everyone on board, there was an Israeli security guard on the plane. The security guard got into a firefight with the hijackers. A steward was injured by a stray bullet, and one of the hijackers was killed in the fighting. The other hijacker, still standing, tried to blow herself up with a grenade, only to have the brave passengers jump on her and prevent her from detonating it. She pulled the pin, but passengers held her hands together and replaced the pin, saving the plane and the lives of everyone on board. The flight was then diverted to London. It got moved around quite a bit and continued to be in service until the middle of the 1980s, when it was given to West Berlin. The plane was repainted, but never saw any more action. It was eventually vandalized, forgotten, and moved to the edge of the airfield, where it is still abandoned today. Have you ever seen an abandoned plane? Did you go inside? Would you like to? Let us know in the comments section below. And if you're liking this video, be sure to hit the thumbs up and subscribe button if you haven't already. Number 6. Russian cargo plane. There is a Russian aircraft from the Soviet era that has sat abandoned near the Barracuda Beach resort in Al-Quwain for the past 20 years. The mysterious cargo plane landed here 2 decades ago and never took off again. What's really strange is that nobody knows why the plane landed and didn't leave again. There are some theories though. Some say it was supposed to be converted into a restaurant or hotel. Some say it was supposed to be a roadside billboard, and others say one of the engines died and it just couldn't take off again. Then nobody wanted to pay the money to move it. The plane ended up being a popular skydiving spot for about 10 years until 2009. Today, it's slowly sinking into the sand and has become a hotspot for birds' nests and is only ever used as a venue for quirky art shows to entertain resort guests. Number 5. Long Marston Airfield Graveyard. The Long Marston Airfield Graveyard is another amazing place filled with derelict, abandoned planes. The airfield was built during the Second World War, though the abandoned planes here were deposited far after the fighting was over. There was once a small aviation museum, though that too closed long ago. Some of the planes here included an abandoned Gloucester Meteor, covered in graffiti, a Shackleton, which was used as a patrol aircraft in anti-submarine operations during the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and even a Percival Sea Prince. This last plane is standing at the gate of the airfield, almost like a security guard, with sharp shark teeth painted on its nose, perhaps meant to be menacing to ward away potential vandals from tagging it or stealing parts. Unfortunately, for urban explorers and fans of abandoned planes, there are currently plans in place to remove all the abandoned aircrafts and build thousands of houses on the empty piece of property. In just a few years, these amazing historical relics will probably be gone, and there will be condos standing in their place. It seems like a pretty sad fate for these planes, to be just left to rot after their years of faithful service. Would you like to check it out before it's gone forever? Number 4. Miss Piggy. Deep in the middle of nowhere, Canada, there's an abandoned plane known locally as Miss Piggy. Yeah, like the famous Muppet. She's a Curtiss C-46 Commando, an old twin-propeller cargo plane used widely by the US military in World War II. On November 13, 1979, this particular plane crashed down while trying to land at the local Churchill Airport. Just before taking off, the pilot realized there was a problem with one of the engines and that they wouldn't get very far if they tried. Rather than risk the flight, they tried to turn around and land, but the landing turned into a crash and the plane was damaged way beyond repair. 3 of the crew members were injured, but survived, and the plane has remained in Churchill, a small town basically at the end of the world ever since. Number 3. The Soviet VVA-14. The Soviet VVA-14 was once thought to be a secret weapon that the Soviet Union could use against United States submarines. That didn't turn out to be the case though. It was supposed to be a vertical takeoff amphibious aircraft with a total of 14 engines. The idea was that it could take off from anywhere in the world without the need of a runway and hover just above the surface of the water. It would have been perfect for countering submarines. It seemed like a great idea. However, the aircraft never really took off. The project was canceled, and the only surviving prototype today sits abandoned in a dirty old field outside of Moscow in Russia. Only 2 prototypes were ever built, and only one took to the skies. The test flight was a total disaster. Then when the inventor of the machine, a Russian named Bartini, died in 1974, the project was totally abandoned. No one wanted to take the mantle. Bartini was a visionary with an unusual mind and character. It seemed he was ahead of his time, and some even called him an alien. He became famous mainly for his wild concepts and ideas, with only a few actually becoming reality. He definitely left his mark in Soviet aircraft building though. One of the vehicles, that was mostly intact, was dismantled, and the other was sent to the Central Air Force Museum near Moscow, but experienced problems with the delivery. The aircraft was looted by scavengers and badly damaged, then just abandoned in the field and hasn't been touched since. Number 2. World War II fighter plane. The incredible wreckage of a fighter plane from World War II that crashed off the coast of Wales back in 1942 was recently given a protective status by the government. The ghostly wreckage of the jet is only ever revealed when the ocean tide washes the sand off its rusted wings. The plane was first spotted in the 1970s and has been uncovered by experts twice since then, once in 2007 and again in 2014. It's a Lockheed P-38 Lightning fighter that is now buried under roughly 7 feet of sand, with only its front nose and the ends of its wings sometimes being visible. The protected status it just got was given by officials in the United Kingdom because they believe the plane holds historic significance, and they're right to believe that, as it is the very first legally designated military crash site to be protected in the UK. The plane was originally flown by the 24-year-old Second Lieutenant Robert F. Elliott, who crashed into the beach in September of 1942. Even though the pilot walked away from the crash without any serious injuries, he was reported missing several months later, and to this day has never been found. What do you think happened to Robert F. Elliott? Where did he go? Let us know what you think in the comments. And number 1, the Airplane Hotel. Deep in the lush rainforests of Costa Rica, right at the edge of the beautiful Manuel Antonio National Park, there is an abandoned 1965 Boeing 727 that has been turned into a luxury hotel. The plane was once used to transport tourists with South Africa Air and Avianca, 2 airlines. It is now a 2-bedroom suite that overlooks the beautiful vegetation, the beach, and the ocean, and the surrounding wildlife. Of course, there was a bit more to building the airplane hotel than just stuffing some rooms into its cargo hold. The airplane was actually transported to where it is now, in pieces from the San Jose airport. 5 massive trucks were needed to get the plane out of the resort. And while the transportation definitely had a negative ecological impact, the finished project is an exquisite example of flexible reuse. On its pedestal, 50 feet above the sand of the beach, it looks kind of like a model airplane. It's not exactly clear why it was abandoned in the first place. The plane is pretty old, so it was probably outdated and left to rot at the airport in Costa Rica before someone with a lot of money decided to turn it into a type of eco-lodge. In any case, if you've ever wanted to sleep in an abandoned airplane in style, you're going to need to book a ticket to Costa Rica and make your booking at the Airplane Hotel well in advance. Would you stay in the Airplane Hotel? Let us know in the comments below, and thanks for watching. If you haven't already, be sure to hit subscribe and come back soon for another amazing video. See you next time.